If you click this video, then you're either sacrificing who you are and losing respect just to make her happy, or are flat out a controlling a-hole at times. Now, setting boundaries is easy, but you make it so damn hard. There is a framework that allows you to get what you want from her without sacrificing yourself in the process. And if you just for a second check your ego at the door, put it down, you'll allow my words to penetrate your heart and open you up to a new perspective. I'm gonna give you a step-by-step framework to set your boundaries while still maintaining respect. Now, the topic of boundaries are one of the most controversial topics in relationships. You'll see debates and videos about, well, whether or not a girl can have a guy friend, for example, or if she's allowed to go on a trip with other girls, or even dress a certain way out on the town.
Girls trips are bad for relationships. Here's why.
Almost always, when a guy and a girl are friends, there's some degree of sexual tension.
And I get it. It's not easy to know their answers to these questions, okay? But if you don't know who you are and what you really want, I'm telling you, on one end, you'll hear a man say, what is she actually getting when she goes out with friends? Why can't she just stay home and dance? And if you disagree with those sentiments, you're a beta simp.
So if you take us seriously, then you're not going on a girl's trip. I believe that a woman doesn't want to go on a girl's trip if she actually loves the man.
Then on the other end, you'll hear people saying, why are you so insecure? Or why are you trying to control her, dude? My intention for this video is to finally end that debate once and for all. I know that's not really possible, but with that goal in mind, hopefully I can give you, the listener, clarity on what boundaries are best for you with your partner so you're not left feeling just conflicted. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. The futile endeavor is to control others, only tightens those chains. How much control do you have over your wife? Now, before you say, not that much, you know, I've heard so many men say that in our program, and yet at the same time, when I hear them talk about situations with their wife, they're saying all the problems that is outside of their control. Let's look at a common example with one of the guys in the program, with Robert. Now, with Robert, his wife moved out, okay? And she's met a bunch of new single divorced friends. And she's been wanting to have people over at her house, go on girls' trips. And that's the whole situation that Robert was essentially complaining about. Now, in this situation, we can look at what Robert's goal is, which will go more into depth about how to find truly your goals based on values and emotions and experiences and needs, which is vital in this whole process of setting your boundaries. But before we do, let me go over to the 3 areas of control, how to set your goals properly in situations that empowers you, gives you more strength and authority, and makes you feel confident in yourself, versus goals you set that are outside of your control, and how to set those boundaries inappropriately. So as we dove into Robert's difficult situation with his wife, the situation that he was upset about was that, yes, he was upset that she was hanging out with friends. Yes, we're divorced. Yes, he was upset that she was out of the house. And yes, he was upset that those potential friends could have brought guys over that would have been around his kids, okay? So a bunch of different problems, but let's look at the goals he could have set with this graph here. You see, this is the sphere of influence. You can see 3 different circles, stuff that is in your influence, your control, and not in your control. Now, if Robert set his boundary, that my boundary is that my wife should not leave the house, okay? Or my wife should not have friends that are single. How much control does Robert have over that goal? Pretty much 0, right? You can't control who your wife hangs out with. You can't, right? So if that was Robert's goal, how would he emotionally feel day by day with her doing that? He'd feel more fear, anxiety, worry, helplessness that would beat him down, and he'd probably feel like, oh, I'm setting boundaries that I have no control over. I feel weak and defeated as a man, okay? Now let's look at areas where he has full control, because the influence one is where guys really mess up the most. Where does he have control? Well, let's say that his wife brought over friends one time, and those friends brought over guys, and his wife was watching the kids. Okay, it's fair to say that Robert can set a clear boundary that, hey, you do not have other men come around our children. In that situation, he has full control, so he should set the boundary around that. But what about the area of influence? Influence is the idea where Robert, he can't exactly tell his wife what to do, but based on stating his boundary, he should have some influence over his wife's emotions and decisions. Now, I'm not gonna give it to you in this video. I want you to comment down below what you think in that situation would be the area of influence and the boundary that he could set with his wife, okay? The main point I wanna make with this area of control when it comes to boundaries is for you not to be the bucket monkey. Let me explain. In a distant land, there was a village where the people faced a persistent problem. Monkeys would constantly raid their food, right? To catch the monkeys, the villagers devised a simple but clever trap. They hollowed out a coconut, leaving a small hole just large enough for the monkey's hand to fit in through. Now, inside the coconut, they placed a few grains of rice. Now, the coconut was then secured to a stake in the ground. When a monkey came across the trap, it would reach into the hole and grab the rice. However, once it had a fistful of rice, its hand was too large to pull out of the small hole. The monkey would struggle and try to run away, but it was trapped. All it had to do to free itself was to let go of the rice, but it couldn't bear to release the prize, even as the villagers approached to capture it. Now, the story of the monkey trap illustrates a powerful lesson. The monkey's refusal to let go of the rice, its desire to control and hold on to what it wants, ultimately leads to its downfall. If the monkey had simply let go, it would have been free. So the moral of the story is that sometimes letting go of control or attachment to an outcome that you don't have control will lead to greater freedom and peace. Holding on too tightly can trap us, while releasing our grip can set us free. The last component about this with control is, after almost 11 years now of being a therapist, like, you would say that my main job is to change behavior, right? And you would think that if I just tell you what to do, you'll do it. But if you were to coach with me and do therapy, a good therapist is more like a guide. And the best therapists know that acceptance precedes change. And the more you try to control someone, the more they don't want to be told what to do, right? So if I work with you, I'm not gonna say do A, B, C. On these videos, it's different, by the way. But if I was working with you one-on-one, I would understand you and then guide you towards the right answers. It's kind of like Jedi mind tricks, right? But you can use that with your wife by not trying to control her first. The more you control, the more she resists. Now, before we actually establish these boundaries, I just taught you how, but before we actually establish these, first we have to understand what you truly want. Who you are and what you want are some of the biggest philosophical questions you'll be struggling with till the day you die. I mean, I know I will. Who am I? Most men in situations, they don't identify their emotions, their needs, or their values in situations, so they feel lost, and that's why there's so much conflict. An example of this was with one of the guys we were working with in our group calls. Now, on this group call, this guy mentioned that his wife was having a conversation with her high school ex-boyfriend every other day. Now, there was no physical connection, there was no meeting up, but she was just talking with him, catching up with him in his life. And he felt completely conflicted because on one end, she even had him talk to him one day and they were just cordial with each other. He said that the guy was just normal. He's like, I don't think he's trying to get at my wife, but at the same time, I don't know. And between all the back and forth, I leveled with him. I was like, let me just ask you a question. You're just gonna answer this straight up, okay? First of all, how do you feel about the situation? Just don't overthink it. How do you feel? Take your attention down to your heart. He said, well, I feel nervous, I feel angry, and I'll say, okay, 2 emotions is enough. There's probably more going on. But nervous and angry, those probably aren't the best emotions to experience with this, to accept it and allow it, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. What do you value? Or what are your values in the situation that are being compromised? He's like, well, loyalty is huge for me, and I feel like she is not really being loyal talking to this guy, because if I were to talk to my ex, then she would be upset about it. I was like, beautiful, right? You understand you identified the core value that you have that's being stepped on, okay? Now, what do you need from this situation to feel better about it? He said, well, I want her to stop talking to him. And I know it seems obvious when I say it to you, but this was like back and forth for like 10 minutes with all these other guys in the group call, but we finally got to the core answer, okay? By identifying how he feels, what values were being stepped on, and what he needed to feel good about the situation, he understood now that he had to go forward and express his start to assert his needs. Because a high value man does this. He asserts his needs despite what happens after. Because what was holding him back was the fear of conflict, was the fear of his wife going away. And if that is the one thing holding you back from asserting who you are, she will lose respect. She knew this situation, the wife knew it was upsetting her husband. But I mean, he wasn't saying anything, so she was gonna take advantage of that, wasn't she? So I want you to pause the video right now before we go to this final framework on how to make decisions on boundaries, and do the same thing with a situation with your wife. Identify your emotions, your values, and your needs that you have to make yourself feel better about this. This doesn't mean you have to go forth right away and assert those boundaries, but at least acknowledge that they are being crossed based on your values and how you feel. Okay, so this is the boundary matrix. There's 4 different ways that you can handle any situation where your boundaries are being crossed. So after you identified them, now I'm gonna apply that previous guy's story with the ex-boyfriend and his wife. And I want you to apply this with yours so you can see in every situation how to use the apex level of responding. So we have the intentions, selfish or loving, and there's a balance between the both. And we have weak behaviors and strong behaviors or hard behaviors. So this one is the weak loving, also known as the beta boy. And in that situation with his wife, he would just let it go. He would allow her to see the guy and he would just suck it up, right? So he would say something like, "You can talk to him, no problem." He thinks that by being loving, by letting her do whatever she wants, that it'll build up this positive emotional equity with her and she'll say thank you and eventually she'll come back to him. But the truth is that she cannot be with a man that she doesn't respect, and he's actually going against what he truly feels. Remember, we did the assessment with the feelings. Now, if the situation was he actually wasn't insecure or angry or frustrated and his value wasn't loyalty, that wasn't top value, then this actually wouldn't be weak and loving. The reason it wouldn't be weak is because he doesn't feel negatively toward it, right? That value and that emotion is a barometer or a signpost for how to engage in this framework. So I want to make that really clear. So if you're in a situation where you're okay with your wife breaking a boundary, it's not really breaking a boundary, is it? So you can actually use this allowing to happen. You must be able to distinguish and discern between if something's breaking your boundary or not, which is why the beginning point or the last point was so important. Okay, so hard and selfish would be the controlling a-hole, right? The overly aggressive guy. And that would be like, basically you stop seeing him or we are done. Something like that, right? Giving the ultimatum. And again, you should know by now, don't be the monkey putting your hand in that bucket, okay? Or that coconut. So with the weak selfish, this next one, it's similar to the weak loving, but this person, it's the covert contract. If you haven't heard about covert contracts, we talk a lot about them on this channel. It's essentially saying, you know what? I'm going to let you do this thing, but deep down, I'm gonna harbor resentment. I'm gonna be distant from you, and you should know, you should read my mind that I'm upset, right? This is feminine. The way it's different from the weak loving guy is that the weak loving guy is actually trying to compromise who he is. He's trying to learn to accept that I should change my boundaries for my wife, right? He's trying to change his emotions. Where the weak selfish is like, I'm gonna pretend that I'm okay with this, but deep down, I'm gonna harbor resentment toward you. Now, the last domain here is the hard and loving, which is the apex man, the man you want to strive toward. Right now, a very powerful statement in establishing your boundaries is doing an if-then statement. So it's something like this. If you continue to speak to your ex-boyfriend, then it'll cross my value of loyalty. I will feel angry and hurt. And if that happens, I will continue to distance myself from you. So I would like you to stop seeing him for the betterment of our relationship. Okay. Now, I'm going to go over a whole other video next week about how to get anything you want from her with a specific framework from something called the NVC rule, which is nonviolent communication by Marshall Rosenberg. However, that is the basic framework you want to follow, is say how you feel about her situation, the behavior that's going on, and say, if this continues, then I will feel this way. And I don't want that to happen, so I would like you to stop. Now, when you say an if-then statement, a lot of guys will screw this up and they'll do it almost like a threat. Like, if you continue talking to your boyfriend, I'm gonna leave the house. Or if you continue talking, I'm gonna be a jerk to you. Absolutely not, right? The simple truth is that you say, if she continues, how that's gonna affect your emotions, and it's gonna cause a hurtness or a division between you and her. You're putting us as the thing that's falling apart. Not that, oh, I'm gonna do this to you, I'm gonna do that, like putting your selfish needs first, okay? It's really important to understand that when you use the if-then statement, so many guys use it wrong, which is why I'm doubling down and trying to teach you this. You do not do it as a threat. You are simply saying, if you continue this, it's gonna make me feel hurt, I'm gonna distance myself more from you, and I would like you to stop so we can feel closer together, okay? And even if she's in a place where she's not wanting to work on the relationship, it is still okay for you to honestly assert what you want, because a high value man still does that. He always goes after what he wants and lets just the chips fall where they may, the cards fall where they may, okay? Another framework in order to set your boundaries properly is to understand testing theory from women. I have a whole huge video breakdown, one of the top videos on the channel right here on test. Go ahead and check that out. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.